Hello, good evening and welcome to the review. The central bank has announced that a flexible inflation targeting regime will come into effect from the end of the first quarter 2019. Meanwhile, the Employees Provident Fund is set to re-enter the Colombo Stock Exchange. Former Central Bank Deputy Governor Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena says that the independence of the central bank must be coupled with accountability. Later on the show tonight, we'll be talking with management consultant Dr. Sarath Buddhadasa about entrepreneurship. But first, here's a look at tonight's top stories.
Delivering the introductory remarks, Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy said that the EPF, the Employees Provident Fund, is set to enter the stock market.
A lot of work has been done in terms of improving processes and procedures. The investment committee now meets on a daily basis. New investment guidelines, investment and trading guidelines have been developed. CCTV cameras and voice recording have been put in place. The segregation between the front, middle and back office has been made more entrenched. And we are working towards, and I think recently the EPF started operating in the secondary market in government securities, and we're working towards the EPF coming back into the stock market fairly soon, once all the preparatory work is completed.
The EPF, managed by the central bank, moved out of the secondary market following the controversial bond scam during the 2015 to 2016 period. Dealers of the EPF were found to be colluding with primary dealer Perpetual Treasuries that were engaged in pump and dump scams. Dr. Kumaraswamy revealed that there are 6 forensic audits into areas under the purview of the CBSL, including the 2015 controversial bond transaction.
I think it's no secret that we've had some legacy issues that we've had to tackle, and that has taken time. It has taken staff resources, it's taken financial resources, and at times it has been distracting. So, though that process is still going on, there are various inquiries, there are 6 forensic audits. All this has to be done, and we need to get through all of them. We've made good progress, and we are determined to stay on course to complete all that work, because clearly those have to be completed, and we need to move beyond that.
Former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena, delivering the 68th anniversary oration, said the Central Bank needs to take serious note of the financial irregularities within the bank and take immediate action to restore trust.
It's very important that the Central Bank should, and the Monetary Board should, take a very serious note of the financial irregularities that might occur inside the Central Bank. The Central Bank Governor of Latvia was arrested for accepting a bribe. Governor of the Central Bank of Afghanistan had to flee the country because he had got a bribe from one of the banks. And also the Governor of the Magna Carta Malaysia has to step down because he was accused of working with the previous administration in Malaysia in supporting the money laundering exercise. And even in our case, there are reports that the former governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, when he was asked to appear before the CID to give a statement, he has absconded. Now these things are very serious matters for the reputation of a central bank, and when the reputation is at a very low level, the threat is that when other people like politicians who intervene in the independence of central bank is unable to get the support of the civil society.
The 2-day summit is themed from insight to impact, unlocking opportunities. Dr. Sarath Buddhadasa, Minister of Science, Technology, Research, Skills Development, Vocational Training and Kandyan Heritage graced the occasion as the chief guest.
In a competitive world, in a more and more dangerous world, I think we are not holding enough cards to play a big game, because we have a very narrow area where global volatility global economics and global trade, we are somewhat exposed. I think at present, we are thinking in a very lopsided fashion. How many of you in this hall know what is happening in the port city? How many of you in this hall knows what's going on in Hambantota and in our ports? How many of you know what is happening in these large infrastructure projects that are going in this country? How many of us know about what is going on in this dysfunctional educational system? It's ridiculous when such large numbers of people who go up to A-level face university entrance examinations, which is based entirely on this very formal education. And the number of people who can get into the university is a minuscule number compared to all those who have been given education up to grade 30. It's a waste.
Stay with the review. On the other side of this break, I'll be joined by Dr. Sarat Buddhadasa, and we'll be talking about entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka. Welcome back to the program. We have a very special guest joining us in the studio this evening, Dr. Sarat Buddhadasa, management consultant, also visiting lecturer at the University of Colombo. And he's the author of the book Attitudes and Behavior Orientations of Sri Lankan Entrepreneurs. Dr. Buddhadasa, thank you very much for taking the time to come into the studio today. Let me start by asking you, what led you to pick this subject?
Nadeem, because when you talk about Sri Lankan entrepreneurship, there are so many aspects to be considered. Now, in my research and also my experience in the Sri Lankan context, and also comparing with my experience with working with other countries, there are so many issues that are, working as impediments for business development, and especially the SME sector. These areas are attitudes, policy issues, and also support system, and also some are really associated with the entrepreneurs themselves. So I thought it's better that I do a research rather than doing an article, empirical data-based research, and to see what has gone wrong and what are the solutions, and how can we help the SME sector and entrepreneurship in this country to achieve the larger national goals. So that's the rationale behind doing this.
What were the key findings that you sort of uncovered through your research?
One finding is Nadeem, because there's a myth in the SME sector, where the support institutions and also policymakers and the bankers and also the entrepreneurs themselves thought the major reason for business failure was lack of finance or access to finance. Now, this research found now only 8% of the entrepreneurs found, and they are lacking in terms of finance, and majority 68% the entrepreneurs themselves found the major reason for their stagnation of the business and also the failure for business was lack of managerial competence and also entrepreneurial competence. So that's a major finding.
When you say lack of managerial competence, that's very interesting as well, because the government of Sri Lanka right now, through Enterprise Sri Lanka, is trying to improve the access to finance of a lot of prospective entrepreneurs in the country. But you say that through your research you've uncovered that only 8% of entrepreneurs who you spoke to identified access to finance as an issue. Is that interesting?
Very interesting, because if you really study this Enterprise Sri Lanka program, the concept paper which I read through, and I find this is basically a credit program. And also with the credit, the program is aiming at increasing the youth entrepreneurship and also maintaining GDP rate above 5,000 US dollars, and also creating 1 million jobs. And also doubling the exports of the country. But you see, when it comes to enterprise or entrepreneurship development, there are so many areas to be considered. One is the managerial competence, that is how you make decisions, how you take risks, and whether you are innovative or creative creative enough to make things happen in the business, and also whether you are planning oriented, feedback oriented. These are the major areas to be considered when it comes to business development. That will lead to business expansion, diversification and modernization. And in that process, the business can, embrace or take in youth or whoever as employees or labor, and then create jobs. But by giving credit, it means nothing. By giving credit, how can it is related to business expansion? No, majority of the entrepreneurs, as I found in this research also, there's a thing called cultural management of resources, especially micro enterprise development sector. When they use money, they don't use the money to reinvest in their businesses, mostly for cultural and social purposes. And therefore, we had in fact so many programs in the past also in this country, Janasavia, so on and so forth. There are so many micro enterprise development institutes, banks and all that. They have been pumping in money into the sector.
But they haven't been building capacity.
Nothing. Because when it comes to business startup, you need to have entrepreneurial competencies like taking risk, being innovative, having a long-term vision, and also passion for the business, and also competence in terms of management that will create sustainable businesses. Now, credit is just only one. And also in this, you mentioned this program, enterprise program, this is not based on a research or empirical investigation. And it's a sort of a vision, created in somebody's mind, and then try to, make it a sort of a implementable plan. Now, you see, if you do a research and see what are the needs of the SME sector, it will be definitely a different scenario. So, I would say, if you have to start a business, you must be guided by passion, risk-taking ability, innovativeness, creativity, and then management competencies, and finally, there can be areas where the finance can play a role, but finance is not the only major factor that will create businesses. There, I think there's a big problem with this program.
Dr. Buddhadasa, I have to ask you this question. Is it a coincidence that this book has been launched around the same time as the Enterprise Sri Lanka program?
I think it's a good thing that it happened, because this is at the initial stage, inception. Now, it is not guided by a strategic plan. When you have a strategic plan for micro enterprise development sector, you must have the strategic goals. Then you must have the strategies, then implementation plan, and monitoring and review. This is how you can, enhance the SME sector in any country. And if you go to India, Bangladesh, Philippines, or some of the African countries, this is what happens. Even South Africa, it happens. Recently, I was in Ethiopia, this is how it happens. But in this country, you have a strategic goal, but there is no implementation plan. There is no review, and there is no evaluation, and there is no feedback. So, if the national level policymakers wants to make this program a successful one, I think they should read this book and learn from the actual scenario in the ground level, and then use this stuff to enrich the program and make it a successful one.
In your research, how many different sort of types of entrepreneurs did you speak to? What was the sort of the size of the pool?
The sample is 160. And it covered all 12 sectors.
What were the sectors, if you don't mind me asking?
Is food sector, and chemical, and garment, and footwear, and many other sectors that are actively playing a bigger role in the economy had been included in this sample.
And geographically also quite spread out?
It's only Colombo region.
Okay. Do you feel that is there any way that anyone could challenge the findings of your research?
Only thing is, anyone needs to challenge the findings of the research. That person has to do a research and challenge. So I think if they do a proper research, the outcome would be the same. So there won't be any challenge to these findings, I suppose.
Do you see the Enterprise Sri Lanka program? Is there a scenario in which you see it becoming a successful program?
No, I don't think. If I go by the findings of this research, there are a lot of deficiencies in this program. One is they are focusing basically on the agricultural sector. There's no room for agricultural expansion in this country, And what you need to know to do is to increase productivity, introduce technology, and also make it a sort of a commercial venture, commercially viable, sustainable agricultural sector, and it has not happened. And also this program has no relevance, no connection or interface to that particular vision. And also I think there you got to work on that area. And also credit, you see, credit has been given to SME sector since 1960s. What has happened? What is our SME's contribution to the national growth, GDP? Just 10%. If you go and review study the countries in our region, all as the
just 10%.
It's about 10%. Why
but
I
all
say
the policymakers keep telling us that SMEs are the backbone of the economy.
It's out of hunch. It's out of sleeves, because no research that. Because you see, now that's another myth, Nadim, because they say that is the backbone of the economy. Now you go to central bank report, and there's no separate section on SME sector. There's no data available on this sector. They don't know how many SME, we don't know how many SME enterprises in the country, and we don't know the level of development of the SME sector, and we have not identified actual needs of the SMEs. For instance, quality management, poor quality, competitiveness, innovativeness, and making it more export oriented. You see, we have only 22 million populace in this country. We have a limited market, and SME sector has to be growth oriented, at the same time export oriented. And if you don't go offshore, you can't survive this sector. You see, and there's no policies related to SME. No, there's no policies. If you take Korea has 16 legislative enactments related to SME sector. Korea has 16 vocational training universities in Korea. There are 50 vocational training institutes in Korea. Now, where's I say take the youth? Are they vocationally trained? No. There's a big lacuna in say garment industry. 35,000 people employment. How can they fill without a technical competence? So these are the areas that they must look into. By just handing out money,
it's not going to work.
It's not viable, and also it's a ADB loan.
Yeah.
It will add to our loan burden.
Dr. Buddhadasa, thank you very much for coming on the show. Some
My
very
pleasure.
Interesting insights there. Dr. Buddhadasa believes that access to finance is not the issue. Handouts are not going to work. What you need to do is to build competency among entrepreneurs and in the SME sector. Attitudes and behavior orientations of Sri Lankan entrepreneurs, it makes for very interesting reading, whether you agree with Dr. Buddhadasa or not. We'll be right back after this short break. Tonight on Speak Your Mind, we have some snippets from the Central Bank's 68th anniversary oration, which was delivered by former Central Bank Deputy Governor Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena.
If somebody asks Governor Kumarasamy to deliver me one truckload of Sri Lanka rupees, 5,000 rupee notes, all he has to do is to go down to the vault, open it, take out sufficient 5,000 notes, put it into a truck and deliver it to someone. Because it's just like a magician who produces a rabbit by just waving a magic wand, the central bank can print money. And that is the defect and the deficiency of the central bank also, because it can print money as it wishes. And as a result, all central bankers are required to play this game very prudently without causing any side consequences for the rest of us in the economy. We people who are the citizens of the country, we accept the money printed by the central bank only on trust. because that is the trust that we have, and the trust is the one which would persuade us to accept it. The trust is, when a 5,000 rupee note is delivered to us by the central bank, the bank promises that when we go to the market, we can buy a basket of goods and services worth of 5,000 rupees. And if we cannot do that, then of course the central bank has breached its trust. Dr. Gokin Sui has explained why the Singaporean authorities, who are known as the old guards, chose for the continuation of the currency board instead of a central bank. The reason is, he says they didn't believe that the central bank created money can deliver prosperity to people. Prosperity comes, according to the beliefs of this old guard in Singapore, through hard work. Hard work has to be demonstrated by students at schools, undergraduates at universities, and workers at workplaces in a competitive manner. And he has said by having that kind of a policy, the Singapore wanted to deliver 3 messages. One to their politicians, second one to their own citizens, third one to the people in the rest of the world. Their politicians, the message is, if you want to incur vote-catching expenditure programs to win elections, you must bring money from your home, not the money printed by the central bank. Their own citizens is, if you want better public services, you must be prepared to pay for them. There's no such thing as a free lunch. The difference between us and Singaporeans is we still believe that there's a free lunch. For everything that comes, we think there's a free lunch without knowing that the free lunch has to be financed by ourselves. Another important thing to do, the appointment of the governor and the monetary board members. Today, it is done exclusively at the discretion of the President and the Minister of Finance. But other countries, even if we take a new central bank like Nepal Rashtra Bank, there is a long selection process. In Bank of Canada, the selection of the next governor starts at least 1 year before the incumbent governor retires. They have a procedure where the governor is, where people can nominate suitable persons for the post of governor. Then there are a series of interviews with the nominated people. And finally, 3 names are suggested to the appointing authority, that's the Governor General of Canada, to select one person as the governor, and the name is announced at least 6 months before the incumbent governor retires. It allows the newly nominated governor to familiarize himself with central banking, be a partner of the central bank, and take over the job. But unfortunately in Sri Lanka, this doesn't happen. Even in neighboring India, we find that when Raghuram Rajan expressed his desire not to be reappointed, selection process took place at least 2 weeks before the new governor took over his office. And according to reports, there were 8 candidates who had been screened by Prime Minister Modi himself with his senior cabinet colleagues before the new governor Patil had been appointed. Another important thing is the expenditure of the senior officers of the central bank. That should be transparent. That is because, as I mentioned earlier, if we want to spend money, it's a matter of just going down to the vault, opening the vault, taking money out. So Bank of Canada has a very important procedure there. Whenever governor, board members, and senior officers travel abroad, entertain outsiders, they have to disclose it in their website. If you go to Bank of Canada website, you can find, but there are hilarious things. So the governor has entertained somebody for lunch by spending about, say, $20 Canadian. But that is the way that the central bank has made itself transparent, so that people will trust the central bank. Now those are small issues compared to the large issue. Today, there is a much more pressing problem for any central banker, which has arisen in the form of alternative currencies called cryptocurrencies. And we find the proliferation of cryptocurrencies and economy is a serious threat to the independence of a central bank, not coming from politicians, not coming from the power groups, not coming from the employees, but coming exactly from nowhere, we don't know, from the cloud maybe. And those currencies are competing with the currencies issued by central banks. And there's no way for central banks to win the game, because now it has been proved that the currency that we issue, rupees and cents, is a very primitive way of doing transactions when it comes to doing transactions by using cryptocurrencies. So most of the central banks like Bank of England, Swedish Riksbank, they are considering the introduction of their own cryptocurrency to go along with the side by side with the physical currency that they produce. The best example comes from Venezuela and Iran. In Venezuela, 2 weeks ago, they introduced their own cryptocurrency called Petro, because they could not manage with the existing currency Bolivar, because the exchange rate between US dollar and Bolivar had fallen within a matter of 3 years from 25 Bolivar to US dollar to 6.5 million Bolivar to US dollar. So 5 digits of Bolivar was taken out just by one thing. And they introduced a new currency called Petro. Iran is also going to introduce a new currency, and the best example comes from our neighboring Reserve Bank of India. Today they have announced, Reserve Bank of India has set up a special cryptocurrency research unit. The mandate, number one, to consider issuing its own cryptocurrency. Number two, regulate all other cryptocurrencies to be issued. Third one is how to cope with the artificial intelligence that is developing, and how we would be able to introduce artificial intelligence to the banking sector. And one suggestion for India is that their cryptocurrency should be called Lakshmi coin. The Lakshmi is the goddess of prosperity. If Governor Indranil Kumaraswamy is interested in issuing a cryptocurrency, probably he can say Masuran or Kahavono, which had been the traditional currency that had been used by our Sinhala kings. He can say Masuran, crypto, Masuran or Kahono, crypto. Now, we have come to a very important point here. To summarize what I have said, in the case of the inflation targeting, everybody knows that the central bank would directly control the rate of inflation rather than the intermediate the instrument called the money supply. But to control inflation directly, central bank should have complete freedom to set the interest rates. To set the interest rate, there should be a statutorily central bank will have to be given powers by parliament, not by politicians, by parliament, that central bank should have the freedom to set interest. Now, fortunately for us, the present government in its Vision 2025 has accepted that the Central Bank of Sri Lanka should introduce the flexible inflation targeting as its monetary policy platform. And the government has pledged that it would introduce the necessary regulations and also amend the Monetary Law Act to facilitate the central bank to do that. So in that exercise, probably we may be able to maintain the independence of the central bank in a proper sense. Then of course we have the issue. When you give too much of powers to anyone, there's a tendency that the power can be abused also. And when we make the central bank independent, we run the risk of creating a monster who cannot be controlled by others. Therefore, it is always necessary that the independence should be accompanied by accountability. Without accountability, if you give independence to a central bank, it's not a reflection on the current governor or the monetary board, but in future we might have a situation where we have a monster heading the central bank. If it happens, there is no way for civil society to control it. We must always think that we know that central bank should be independent, but we must know there's a government which is sovereign, which is above us, and therefore we have to accede to their own demands. And when it comes to negotiating with the government, the former first Ceylonese governor of the central bank, the late Mr. Newsfirst.lk, he said, central bank should nag the government like a good wife until such time the government accepts the central bank's view. So it's a relationship between a husband and a wife. But I might amend it, a good wife is not good for the central bank today, because we know a good wife yielding to the demands of the husband will run the risk of getting pregnant every year. It must be a smart wife who would at least be able to have a gap between the pregnancies. So this is the choice for us today. We have to work with the government. We cannot be totally independent from the government. It's the role of functioning as a smart wife, and that's the role of the monetary board and the governor of the central bank.
And that's a wrap of Newsfirst Review 360 for this week. I'm Nadim Majid. I'll see you again same time, same place next week. Good night and good luck.